Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. And today I'm going to be taking my first look. I'm doing my first review of the Z97 stuff that's coming out. I'm going to be doing the Asus Z97A. Now, the reason why I'm starting and doing the first review with the Z97A is it's the lowest end board that I've got my hands on at the moment. We will go back and do some budget stuff later on. This is the first of the samples to come through the door, so it's the cheapest one that I've got. So it gives me a good base of things to work on, and it also, rather than doing the most expensive one first and then, you know, seeing everything kind of drop off, or at least that's the way we would hope, we start with this one and hopefully we would progress upwards. Now, the Z97 is just the chipset on the board. The little heat sink down in the bottom right hand corner, underneath that's your chipset. Now that's what's really changed. It's still the same socket as Haswell, it's still 1150, and we're still having to test it with the older CPUs as well. So I'm testing this with a 4770K. Now, some of the non-K series CPUs were actually released a little while ago, but annoyingly, Intel have staggered launches. So we get the motherboards first, and then we are going to be getting some new CPUs in about 6 to 8 weeks. Don't even know when, not whether, but when I'm getting my samples yet. I know I've definitely got some, but it's just a case of when they decide, you know, finally decide to do launches, and when press pack goes out and all that kind of stuff. So we are quite annoyingly going to have to retest at least some of the boards again. We'll probably pick out the best ones. I'm definitely going to do the Z97A because, like I said, it's the nice low-end one, so it gives us some comparisons to do. I have got some other Asus boards. I've got the Ranger and the Hero to do, so there's a fair bit of stuff there to get done. Now, the way that we generally do things is we use the same hardware throughout the review series, so that the results stay the same. Now, I've changed the graphics card for this one, so it's slightly more, you know, a slightly newer one. We will be running the Matrix, but the Matrix hasn't made it back from the show yet. So for this review, I've got the reference GTX 780 Ti in the rig, but I've adjusted the clocks on it. We've also introduced, we will be doing some SATA Express testing. And we have got some 2933 Corsair Vengeance Pro memory that we'll be doing to test the boards to see if they can do high memory speeds as well. So we can kind of chuck a little bit extra in there. And then we have changed around, whereas before we did stock tests, which was basically 1333 memory, CPU running at stock. We've now just moved on to SODIC. We're just going to run overclock tests. And with this CPU, we've got a kind of a nice starting point, or at least our nice kind of like level off point was a 1.26 volts and a 4.9 gigahertz overclock. We probably will go back to stock and overclocked when we get the new CPUs, but at the moment where we're essentially having to do something which we generally wouldn't normally do, and that's test the old CPU on a new board and all that kind of stuff, and we know we're going to have to go back and do it again. We've just minimised the tests down, and we'll probably reintroduce the stock stuff later on. So we're essentially, on the 11th of May, I'll have quite a few reviews going up, and we have to do them in quite a short amount of time, so that we're just going to, we're just trying to kind of whittle it down a little bit, really. So hopefully that should kind of help you out a bit. Now, the real biggest change, and it doesn't really count with the 4770K, but the main changes for Z97 were Intel realised that they were having heat problems with Haswell. Not 100% sure why. I didn't particularly pick it up on Ivy Bridge, but we knew about the thermal paste issue. Now with Devil's Canyon, that should be fixed. Intel are saying they have spent a lot of time working on that. So fingers crossed. But another thing that they've done, which hasn't particularly been shouted about very loudly, is on Haswell they did put the voltage controller for the CPU onto the CPU, which was a lot of kind of speculation was that could have been where a lot of the heat could have been coming from. So after that launch, they kind of held their hands up and went, yeah, all right, maybe that wasn't the best of ideas. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it back off again. So not very long after Haswell, we kind of knew that there was going to be a refresh coming in 2014. So, and that was kind of a little bit confusing in itself. So what they have done, or on the new CPUs, will be the voltage controller is on the board. We're not entirely sure whether the boards are bypassing the CPU one, or whether the CPU one is still doing its own thing or not. But it's not really going to matter, because once the new CPUs come out, we know that the voltage controller is back on the board. Hopefully, though, what that should then mean, and this is the theory behind it, we're not 100% sure, because obviously until we start testing we don't know, but it could open up the variables between different boards again. It could mean that a cheaper board will perform, or not overclock, I should say, as well as some of the more expensive boards. But therein lies a bit of a conundrum, because where the CPUs, as in like Ivy Bridge and Haswell, are so very efficient, we still don't know whether they actually need all these power phases yet. And that's really where the voltage controller kind of comes into its own. I mean, back in the old days when CPUs were just ridiculously power hungry and were sapping everything, you needed more power phases to be able to get a cleaner, more stable overclock. But as things have got more efficient, you don't necessarily need all those power phases anymore. But you'll still see it, as with the the Z97A has got 8 power phases on it around this CPU, but with the Z97 Deluxe, that's got 14. But we don't know whether you're going to even need 8 yet. So it is a very much, we're right at the very beginning, wiping the blackboard clean, and we're going to be starting to take new notes. Now, what I'm going to do is we are taking a look at Z97A, but it's also our first look at maybe what the Z97 chipset may bring. So we've got SATA Express on the boards. We do have M2 as an available. It's available on the boards as well, depending on which one you pick. So I have already done a preview of the Z97A, so I would kind of like push you towards go and have a look at that, so that you can actually have a look at the board itself and the stuff and everything that's scattered around it, because I'm not going to bore you with that, because I've already spoken for quite a bit already. What I am going to do is I'm going to show you some nice features, and it's software stuff that's really on the board that we can take a look at. And then also what I'm going to do is we're going to take a look at some overclocking. But if you want to go and have a look at all the benchmark results, please click the link, and I'm sure it's that end of the screen. Go and take a look at the OC3D review on the website, and that's where you can see all the comparisons and stuff. And then I'll wrap up with a bit of a verbal conclusion and stuff at the end of this video. But I'm not going to be giving you pages and pages and pages of performance results. I would kind of say, it's, if you're interested in that and not just my thoughts, please click on the link, because it will be much more interesting for you to go and have a look at all the graphs, and you can have a look at all of the different tests. Then we've done some game tests, we've obviously done CPU benchmarks tests, memory tests. There's a whole plethora, and there's 16 pages worth of stuff that you can go and actually have a look at to see how the board has performed with this CPU, new memory stuff, all kinds of stuff really. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift the camera, I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to show you some of the software that I actually quite liked. Okay then peeps, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at this, and it's Asus boot setting. Now, the first thing, as I zoom you in, is direct to BIOS. Now this is actually pretty damn good, because you can click this button, and although annoyingly it does bring up that second window, so you have to click OK, and then it will boot directly into the BIOS. Now I don't need to show you that. I wish it was quite literally you just go direct into BIOS and then it would work. I also think for Asus, just as a kind of a nice thing, it would be nice to maybe have just a shortcut up here that was direct to BIOS, and you double click it and it literally does restart the machine and go straight to the BIOS. I don't see the point of having to open the program, click the BIOS button and then click OK, when, to be fair, you could make it a lot simpler. Now the thing is when if we go into the advanced setup, you can enable fast boot, and how it boots after the AC power loss. So if you, for argument's sake, if you, well, you get a flipping power cut or something. Now with a fast boot, sometimes it can be quite difficult to get into the BIOS. Sometimes you can't hit delete quick enough. Sometimes it just doesn't give you the option in the first place. So the direct to BIOS bit is a very good idea. And the fast boot thing, essentially what that will do is it will change a couple of settings in the BIOS for you. So your rig will, essentially it cuts down on the post times and stuff, and it will get you onto your desktop much quicker. I personally quite like the idea, but like I said, if you are in and out of your BIOS all the time, you will find yourself using this direct to BIOS button. So if you're sat there and you're smashing delete and you can't work out why you can't get in there, just use this. So that's in itself, I quite like that. It does save a bit of time. We also have AI Suite 3. Now I quite like the graphical interface of this. It's all kind of simple. It is just there, it just works. If you can hear any noise in the background, it's they're actually fitting the new fire alarm system in my building at the moment. It's doing my head in. Anyway, so before I go and kill him, you can see that we've got CPU speed, we've got the TPU, fan expert, DigiVRM, EPU. I mean, we're not saving any power at the moment. Turbo app is off because I've got a manual overclock set. Now, talking about manual overclocks, what I have got is we've got a slightly reduced one here at the moment, but I will go back because I'm going to show you the overclocks that we've been doing our tests on. But also there's this little thing called Turbo LAN, and it's up here, but quite randomly it's more down here because it sits in the bottom of your screen. Now it is nice in the way that you can keep an eye on it, but I do wish that we could make it bigger. It's just, I always kind of find myself wanting it to be, loving that drilling. I always find myself wanting to keep an eye on this more. You can go down here and there are a lot of options that you can go through, your different settings. You can put different skins on, you can do the traffic shaping. There's a lot of bits and bobs that you can do in there. This is more really to help with your games and anything, and it help make sure that your ping's as low as it can be. The bandwidth is all game specific if you're running multiple programs at once. I have to admit though, for me personally, and just a rig, I've never really felt the need that I needed it. Intel LAN's generally, you know, good enough and quick enough, but it's always good to have something different to play with, because you do get bored with playing with the same thing every time, don't you, boys and girls? The other thing that I kind of liked, although I've not spent a lot of time setting it up because it would be an arse with my home network, is there is Asus Media Streamer, and you can set this up to be able to stream things from your rig to multiple devices around the house, whether it be another machine, a laptop, a phone, your TV if they're capable and stuff. You can already see that on here it's picked up my Plex media server. It's not, there we go. You can just go through and it's picked up my Plex, and the reason why it's taken so long to go through it is I have an obscene amount of music because I do spend a lot of time listening to it at home, but it has picked up my Plex, which is on my home server. There we go. And it can be a good way for you to share all your stuff if you're not using anything you know, like that already. It's kind of a nice way that you can link everything together. It's definitely something that if you've got a new rig and stuff, you'll probably enjoy playing with and setting up. But I've already kind of moved on to other like programs and stuff. If you're running XMBC or Plex or Servio or something like that, you probably won't find this that interesting. But if you're not, it's definitely something that I think quite a lot of you, especially if you are into streaming your stuff to your phone or your laptop and TVs and stuff like that, you'll probably find that quite interesting and something to definitely play with. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm now going to just nip into the BIOS quickly and just apply an overclock ever so quickly. And we will be in and out of the BIOS a couple of times. And in fact, I'm going to use the direct to BIOS button. Okay then peeps, so this is a screenshot that I took of when I was doing the temperature testing So we've got OCCT there, and you can see that it's been running for 36 minutes and 48 seconds. That's over, and this is the reason why I did a screenshot quickly and then stopped it. It's because I normally only run it for 30, but I forgot I'd set it up for an hour. It was just when I was playing around with some stuff to make sure that it was all 100% stable, like initial testing and stuff. What we can see over here is we've got 1.258 volt. Now in the BIOS I hadn't changed any of the load line calibration settings or anything like that. Now one thing I do want to stress to everyone is I do have an exceptional CPU. It's very much a Silicon Lottery winner. So don't go thinking that every 4770K is going to do 4.9 gigahertz at 1.26 volts. They generally don't. I've had probably 6, maybe 7 CPUs here now. That's the only one of mine that's come anywhere near close to that at those kind of volts. So just want to kind of stress that. So we've got 1.258 volts, 4.9 gigahertz. It was all 100% stable. I was very, very happy that a board this low down the range, again, just went instantly in and smashed that kind of overclock out. But I'm just going to stop the camera because I want to show you something else. Okay. So on the board there's a little easy Xmp button, and it does mean that even with your overclock set you can just flick that button and it sets your memory up for you. Now it did do this with the Easy XMP, but this was with me, this is the Easy XMP, but I did eventually go in and change it so that the command rate was 1 rather than 2. So with Easy XMP it was on 2, but it was perfectly stable and easy to run with it on 1. So that's one of the things you do always need to. XMP can be brilliant, but it's always best to go in there and double check everything is 100% the way it should be, or the way it could be by doing it manually. But as you can see, we did all of our benchmark tests at 2400 megahertz. We stuck the 2933 megahertz kit in, and although it does say 1466, what we have to do is double it. So that's a 2933 megahertz, and that's still running with a 1.258 volts and 4.9 gigahertz. So 4.9 gigahertz overclock at 1.26 volts, and it's still stable with 2900 megahertz memory. Absolutely brilliant. Well, we thought it was brilliant until I thought to myself, I'm not just going to, because generally what I do when I do the testing is I will go up to about 1.3 volts to try for 5 gigahertz. And I think I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, there may be one board that managed to get 5 gigahertz out of all of the Z87 tests. The Z97A straight away has managed to get a 5 gigahertz overclock at 1.28 volts. So less than 1.3 volts, which was the point that I normally push to before. And that was always just to try and get a stable, do you know what I mean, like a screenshot. This 1.28 volts, changed it to 50 multiplier, hit F10, booted straight up without any hitches, hardly any changes in the BIOS, and we still managed to get that. So considering that this is a cheap board, and by that I mean it doesn't necessarily cost a lot, rather than it's not built very well, it's an absolute kind of properly surprised by this, and I do really mean it. Now, like I've said to you, if you want to have a look at the reviews, all of the testing and comparisons and stuff that we've done, make sure you click the review link and go and take a look on the Overclock 3D website, because it properly is, for the price and everything that's on this board, for it to perform this well, I'm actually pleasantly surprised. Okay then peeps, so I've got this in my motherboard test rig. I've taken the side off, that's why you can see the lights at the bottom. But really the point in what I wanted to show you here was around the CPU socket area. Now obviously I have got a lot of lights and stuff in this, but before the Asus Gold, I didn't like it. I stand by it, the heat sinks coupled with the colour, they just didn't work. They dated the boards too much. This time the gold is a lot more subtle. It's very, they've toned it right down. From someone that does paints thoughts, there's a lot more silver in it now. It's a much duller colour, and to kind of, you know, emphasise that fact, that's a silver ring round there on the H105, and I think that it does work quite well with that gold. It's actually quite an understated board. It's the gold isn't trying to grab your attention and, you know, smash you around the face with its gaudiness. It's much more subtle now, and it's still not going to be to a lot of people's tastes, but for, you know, kind of an understated system that you don't particularly maybe want, you know, like any of the red kind of gaming type stuff, and you want possibly what you could even describe as being a more grown-up style system with, you know, more kind of sensible kind of understated kind of colouring. I actually think that works quite well. And I know a lot of people are now going to be saying about the brown PCB, but we do need to remember the price of this board, and really the brown in bunny ears that you're seeing is the copper underneath. And obviously if you start adding more layers to cover that up, it's going to drive the price up. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind there. Also something, while we are talking about features, and you're not really going to get the best of looks at it, but is the crystal sound. Ooh, look at the focus on that. I do like this new camera. Is the crystal sound. As far as audio is concerned, it's still onboard audio, but it is the quality, considering the price of the board, is significantly better than the onboard audio that we may have got on boards a couple of years ago. So that is thoroughly, you know, it's definitely a step in the right direction, and it's also something that Asus have spent a lot of time polishing off. Now what I'm just going to talk to you about ever so quickly now is the BIOS. Okay then, so onto the BIOS, and yes, I have done this review a bit more back to front than I probably should have done, but it was just the way my mind was flowing this morning. Anyway, the BIOS, there's a lot of yellow in there, to be fair. You could think this belonged with another brand, but anyway. So, DRAM status, I'm unsure why it's saying that it's running at 1333 megahertz. Still not 100% get my head around it. It might need a BIOS upgrade before it starts reading stuff properly. Anyway, so we can see that we've got the mouse here. I'm just going to turn my mouse down. If you turn the sensitivity on your mouse down, it does, you can use it a bit better. These fan icons here, I haven't got anything attached to the board, but if you do, it will, those little fan icons spin, and it will tell you the RPM that those fans are doing. You can go into this lovely fan setting here and change all your fan profiles and stuff, and oh, it's not going to let me do it because I've not got one attached, but you can change all the spin up profiles, and you can go in there and you can manually set your fan curves and how you want it to be done, whether it's PWM or via the voltage. It's all quite nice and easy to do. XMP you can easily turn on and off here. You've got Intel Rapid Storage Technology access that you can change to here. System tuning up here, quiet, performance or energy saving you can change up here as well. You can also change the boot priority. If you press F7 though, it takes you into something that where most of us are probably more used to, where we've got the AI tweaker. You can see there that we've got the 4.9 gigahertz kind of sat there. It's actually reading the RAM at 1333 again. But anyway, so we've got that in there. You've got all the voltages and stuff further down, and then it's very it's the only way I can explain it is it's like the old BIOS, but it's a lot slicker. I mean, just by hitting, you can see it's, rather than just kind of like just changing the screen, it's all animated. It looks really nice. Everything has animated drop downs and stuff. It has a really nice feel. Essentially what they've done is they've taken the BIOSes of old and they've just spent a bit more time making it the smaller details that most people don't notice. They've spent a little bit more time polishing that, and I actually really like it. It's something that I'm quite, you know, I'm quite down with it actually. It wasn't something that I was particularly ready for. Something that I do like though is this, you know, is Quick Note. Now you can't screenshot this, which is why it's not in the main review, but you can very graffiti style, you can actually leave yourself some notes. So for argument's sake, if you wanted to, you could say type about the few BIOS settings that you've changed, and then you'd have a really easy way to go back to. You know, obviously you could write it down on a pen and piece of paper, the really old school way, but this could be easy ways for you to leave yourself a little note in the BIOS. Say for instance, if you're testing something for a week or so, you could just leave yourself a, you know, change PCH voltage to this at this date and time, you know, wait and see what it goes like type thing. So you can leave yourself just very tiny little notes. That, I think, if you end up using this, it will be brilliant. So essentially the BIOS is very much the same kind of, it's got the same stuff in there that we've been used to. So all the same kind of things that we can tweak and that kind of thing, that's all in there. It just made it a lot more user friendly, and that I really like. Also with the basic one, that's obviously going to be great for beginners to get their rig set up, change a few bits and bobs and get everything starting. But don't forget, with the XMPC, there is the XMPC switch on the board as well. Okay then, my lovelies, so in the essence of trying to keep this video down so it's not 3/4 of an hour long, I'm going to try and rattle through this quite quickly. Obviously this is the first Z97 board that we've done, and essentially until the new CPUs come along, we've kind of got to treat it as just kind of a little bit of a polish on the old Z87 chipset. So award, we're going to give this one value for money. We don't want to yomp in with too many, you know, high-end awards yet, because we want to give the other boards a chance to kind of, you know, hopefully better this one. But for the price that it comes in at, for it to hit that 4.9 gigahertz overclock was brilliant. The scores that it pumped out, if you go and have a look on the OC3D website, were on par with pretty much all of the boards that we've done Z87 wise. This could just as much be because of the fact that we're running the same CPU. Obviously the 3D results were going to be significantly higher because we were running the Z87 Ti, the 780 Ti instead. But CPU and memory specific results were pretty much exactly where that we would have been expecting. But obviously we did get a 5 gigahertz out of this, and it did boot 2933 memory. So if you're lucky enough to get a CPU, because it does come down to the CPU in all honesty, that is strong enough to run some of this stuff, then you've got the, you know, the board is capable, and that is a very critical thing as well. It's just as much about the memory controller as it is the motherboard. 9 times out of 10 though, it will be the CPU that's going to hold you back from running something like this, and obviously they are eye-wateringly priced anyway. But so it can overclock very well. It was really cool, calm and collected with it as well. Even when I was benching 4.9 gigahertz and I had it, you know, stress testing, the heat sinks didn't particularly get very warm, although we have got a, you know, a well ventilated setup here to be able to give the boards the best kind of possibility. I know we're not in an open air rig or anything like that, but we've got, you know, a nice amount of positive airflow in here. It's all in and then straight out the roof. But it didn't get hot. The chipset cooler didn't get hot, and the MOSFET coolers didn't get hot either. It was very easy to overclock. The BIOS, it was kind of, I always start with the basics rather than going in there and changing everything. So I essentially went in there and made a few minor changes in there that I know are the settings that I would always do for my CPU. And then it just booted straight away. There was no, you know, having to spend hours trying to work out why something wasn't particularly stable or anything like that. So I was very impressed with that. And also the BIOS for beginners, quite intuitive. You've also then got the software things as well. The AI suite, and then the director BIOS, all those kind of things on the desktop are great. I do think that with the TurboLand thing, it would be nice to have a bigger graph for you to be able to follow, even if it was like a window that you had on your desktop rather than something that you can monitor in your games. Obviously both is good, you don't need to necessarily replace it. But we're kind of, because we're not 100% sure on prices at the time of making the video, but I'm kind of going to guesstimate around the 100-110 mark. So for that, like I said, the gold is a lot more less intimidating now. They've made it a lot more kind of softer. It's even down to the point where I don't particularly find it that offensive, and I've even been like, oh, that's not a bad looking rig. If you kind of got rid of the green and just went with a, you know, a monochrome type system, so, you know, black and whites, and kind of really trying to keep it the intensity down, I don't think that the gold particularly stands out to an offensive nature, and it would all kind of, you know, if you just had like a nice graphics card with a back plate in there, and you know, the white fans and stuff, I think it actually quite works, and it wouldn't be something that you'd think was necessarily like a themed system, but it would be with the type of thing that would be a very kind of nice, clean, grown up looking rig. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like it so much. So it'd be an epic base for a more budget approach at you know, one of these rigs, maybe with a 4670K in there or something, or even if you just don't want to spend a lot of money on the motherboard, because this has all the features that you might want, smash your 4770K in there and overclock the tits out of it. This is capable of doing it. So Asus Z97A, value for money award, first one of these boards that I've done, but because there's quite a few of them to get done for the launch, I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'm going to move on and get straight on with the next one. But for now, at least, with the Asus Z97A value for money award winner, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you, out.